All right, well, let's get going. We're gonna start on our backs today in a supported bridge pose. So if you do have a block handy, grab that. And you can slide it underneath your sacrum. And I would recommend not going as high as you can go. Go a level less, just so that this is more relaxing to start. So if you're newer to this, if you're watching this on YouTube, you just set up with ankles underneath your knees, feet about hips distance apart, edges of the feet parallel with the edges of the mat. And then you can grab a book or a yoga block if you have one. Inhale, press into your feet, lift your hips up off the mat, and then you're gonna slide that block underneath your sacrum. So sacrum is that flat triangle at the bottom of your tailbone. What often happens is we get the block underneath our in our lumbar, so that's really uncomfortable. Your glutes start to melt towards the floor, so it's more like the block is underneath them, so there's a sense of support. And then take a moment here, kind of snuggle your shoulder blades underneath you, and you can do whatever feels good with your arms here after you do that. So hands resting on belly, one hand on heart, one hand on belly, arms by your side. Sometimes it can feel nice to come into cactus shape arms. So that'll just give you a little stretch in the neck. And then as much as possible, you don't want to look side to side here. So just press into the center of the back of your head. Close your eyes if they're not already. And then take a nice deep inhale through your nose. Full, complete exhale through your mouth. Ha. Do that a couple more times. Inhale, fill up with air. You can really notice the expansion of your inhale in this bridge pose. Exhale, sigh the breath out, let it go. Ha, let the day go. Let any tension in your body, just release it. Couple more times on like that, just at your rhythm, at your pace. And then melting into the rhythm of your Jai breath. So nice inhale through your nose. You create a soft rush of air in the back of your throat. And then a full, complete exhale through your nose as well. Also creating that soft rush of air. So this sounds like ocean waves rolling in and out. This breath it does a couple things. It helps to heat up the body internally. But perhaps more importantly, this sound, this effortful breath gives us something to focus our attention on. So it kind of helps to quiet the mind. So we're going to be here for a few moments, just soaking up the quiet, which is such a nice thing to do most days. But I think especially this time of year with the holidays, when life gets a little crazy and then you throw a pandemic on top of that, there's we're all feeling kind of stressed, a little out of sorts. So allow yourself to be still and quiet. Before you drop into that quiet space, just do a little scan of your body. Are you gripping anywhere that you don't need to? So that might be toes kind of hanging on for dear life. Lift them, spread them, feel the arches in your feet lift instead. You might feel some tension in your face, your jaw, around the eyes, so soften there as well. And then just being in this place of stillness, soaking it up. Anytime your attention wanders, you just remind yourself to come back to your breath. So this doesn't have to look perfect. It's more about the effort we put in than this final place that we try to get to. Good. Take a deep inhale through your nose. Open your mouth, sigh the breath out, let it go, ha. And then you can blink your eyes open here. You can keep them closed. Just keep gazing up at the ceiling if you have them open. As you inhale, stretch your arms up overhead. And then you're going to interlace your fingers and then flip your palms so they face behind you. So kind of stretching out the fingers a little bit. As you do this, see if you can get the inner arm to roll towards the outer arm so you find that widening across the backs of your shoulders. So little arm stretch, little finger stretch, little shoulder stretch. Maybe begin to direct your tailbone forward a little more. Find a little more length through the sides of your waist. Good. One more deep inhale. As you exhale, just release your hands. They come by your side. Inhale, press into your feet. So just lift your hips up off your block. Move it out from underneath you. Lower down here. And we're going to come into a nice little resting pigeon stretch. So keep that left knee bent. It's pressing into the mat. And then you're going to cross your right ankle above your left knee. Just take your right hand, press it into that right thigh. Flex the right foot so that engages the muscles around the knee. So you're not feeling stress or pressure there. Return to that sound of your Jai breath if you've lost it at all. And then you're welcome to stay here like this. So starting out, when our bodies aren't quite as warm, we don't need to move as far as we might be able to ordinarily. So if this is a good stretch in this hip, in this glute, stay here. If you'd like to go a little further, maybe you can bend your left knee into your chest. You're making a triangle with that right leg. So reach your right hand through there and then either interlace fingers around your left thigh. If you're a little more flexible, you might be able to get them around that left shin. Notice if you've started to roll up. If that's the case, just take a level off here. So you want to be able to have the back of your head, your shoulders releasing down into the mat. And then check in with that right foot again. Just make sure that it's flexing. Finally, if you want to wedge that right elbow into that right thigh. So again, just pressing forward, trying to create some space in this lower right waist. You're welcome to do that. Listening to your breath, sending your exhale to that outer right thigh, hip. Just imagine that it's creating a little space, a little ease in your body. And do know that when we first get on our yoga mats and start our yoga practice, we can feel tight. That changes day to day. Good, one more deep inhale wherever you're at with this. And then as you exhale, just release. Uncross your right ankle, so find that bridge pose setup, and then left ankle crosses above right knee. Again, flex that foot, it's as though you're standing on it. Take your left hand into your left thigh. Gently press forward any amount. And then right away, start to pay attention to how this side feels different in your body. What's going on here? Back out a little bit if you need to. And then you're welcome to stay here. If this is a good stretch, it's a good place to be. If you want to go a little further, start to bend your right knee into your chest. Take your left hand through that triangle you've made with your legs. And then again, interlacing around shin if you're a little more flexible, if you have longer arms, or maybe just your thigh. but do make sure that both shoulder blades are pressing into the back of the mat. The center of the head is pressing into the center of the mat. And then finally, if you want to wedge that left elbow into that left thigh, trying to create a little more space, you can play around with that, just see how it feels. Good, couple more breaths. Good, nice deep inhale. Exhale, release here, uncross that left ankle, and then give both knees a squeeze into your chest. And then let's just come into happy baby. So taking legs wide, if you're tighter, you're just gonna pull down on your thighs. The rest of us might be able to grab the outer edges of our feet so the arms come to the inside, and then gently pull down here. Good, just a few breaths like that. Hi, Susie. You could even sway a little bit from side to side, just massage out the lower back if that feels okay to do in this pose here. This happy baby. Good, and then hug knees in again. And a couple of options here. So if it feels okay on your spine to begin to roll forward and back a few times, do that variation. If that doesn't feel good in your body, you're just gonna roll off to one side of the mat and then press up. And we're all gonna eventually come up to our tabletop position. So landing on your mat with your shoulders over your wrists, your hips over your knees. Good, and then we're gonna just start to move here. So first just check to see that your fingers are spreading evenly and they're pressing, and that the crease of the wrist is parallel to the top of the mat. Knees are about hips distance apart. And then as we inhale, we arch into our lumbar. So chest comes forward through the gates of your shoulders. As you exhale, you press the mat away, you round in, let the back of your neck lengthen and get long. And then you continue like that. Moving with a breath. That inhale through your nose, arching into the cow stretch. Exhaling, rounding in, getting into the thoracic, coming into the cat stretch. Moving with your breath. So you're finding a rhythm that feels good in your body today. It's not too fast, it's not too slow, it's just right. Gently starting to warm up the spine. Finding this idea of vinyasa as we start to connect the movement with the breath. So we find this little moving meditation feeling as well. And for a lot of us, as we begin to move and flow like this, it actually helps to quiet the mind. So it's kind of a nice little technique tool that we have. Couple more rounds. Good. As you inhale, come back to neutral spine, and let's do a little shoulder neck stretch today. So you know you're a little tighter today, grab a book or a block or a blanket or a cushion from the couch. So let's start rooting down into that right palm. You're gonna take your left arm underneath that wrist and you're gonna lower onto that left shoulder and ear. So this is where it might feel better to rest your head on a block here. So there's a little twist. Feels like you're wrapping those left ribs to the right. You might just stay here like this. If it feels like you can start to stretch that right arm up towards the ceiling, you're welcome to do so. Maybe even start to lean that arm back and then externally rotate. Bend the elbow, and then you can either grab a piece of shirt on the lower left side. Maybe you can get your fingertips to the inside of your left thigh. So all really good options. Wherever you're at, you can gently press this right shoulder head back. Good. Few more breaths. If you're in the wrap, start to extend. Fingertips up towards the ceiling. And then as you exhale, you unwind. And then just take a couple rounds of your cat-cow. Let that side go. Good. Inhale to neutral spine, and we set up for our second side. So root down into that left palm. Maybe have your block handy. Take your right hand, thread it underneath that left wrist, and then you lower onto this right shoulder, right ear, or a prop. And the prop could go underneath your shoulder or your ear or both. It just kind of depends on what's going on in your body. And then as you're here, you're going to start to wrap those right ribs up towards the ceiling. So there's a little twist. And you might not have to go very far at all. You're going to be feeling a stretch in your neck for sure. It could be quite intense. So that's why props are nice. If this feels like enough in your body, you stay here. Otherwise, you begin to extend that left arm up. And that might help you to twist those right ribs up towards the ceiling a little more. Spin that palm to face behind you. Bend the elbow, grab a piece of shirt, lower right waist. Maybe you can get your fingertips to the inside of the right thigh, and then you just get a little leverage to open up that shoulder a little more. Have you lost that thread of your Ujjayi breath? If you have, just come back to that sound. That inhale through your nose, that exhale through your nose. Nice, Susie. If you took the wrap, go ahead and extend your left arm up. And then as you exhale, you unwind, come back to your tabletop position. So let's just come into a little modified Vashisthasana, so side plank pose before we begin to flow here. So you're gonna reach your right toes back, curl them under so that leg is in plank pose, and then really feel the top of your thigh, your glutes press up towards the ceiling, your calf press up towards the ceiling. Keep the leg that active as you start to roll to the inner edge of that right foot. Then you're gonna root down into your left palm, make sure that shoulder is above the wrist. Start to come up onto those right fingertips, opening up, and then stacking shoulder blades on top of each other. Try to get a little longer through that left side of your waist. Seal more into the back edge of that right foot. Maybe you bring your gaze up, and that will definitely challenge the balance. You might fall out of this pose. The good news is that it's not far to the floor. Good. One more deep inhale. As you exhale, you unwind, and then we take that to the second side. So from your tabletop, reach your left toes back. Good. Fire up that leg. It's so strong. The key is to hold on to this as we start to roll to the inner edge of the foot. And then you start to lift up on to those left fingertips as you root down, anchor into that right palm. Begin to extend that top arm up. So shoulder blades are stacking on top of each other. This is like our triangle pose arms. This is actually triangle pose upper body as well. Trying to really extend through both sides of the waist, especially that right side. And then again, as you seal into the back edge of that left foot, maybe start to bring your gaze up to your left thumb. Just challenge your balance. Maybe squeeze the outer hips in towards each other to help you hold on to it. Deep inhale. As you exhale, you unwind. Good. From here, walk your hands forward a couple of inches. Keep the belly engaged. Inhale, rock forward so shoulders land over wrists. As you exhale, elbows bend, a little modified chaturanga. Keep the shoulder heads lifting, just a couple of breaths here, pausing. And then go ahead and come all the way down onto your belly. Interlace your fingers at the small of your back. If you're at home watching this on YouTube and that doesn't work for you, you can just reach, arms by your side, palms facing inward. You could also use a strap here. So all good options. Lengthen back through your toes. Roll a little bit to the outer edges of the feet, just resting on your forehead. And then as you inhale, keep pressing down into your feet. So if you are interlacing fingers, Start to drag your knuckles towards your heels. And if you're hyper flexible in your joints, a little micro bend in your elbows is going to feel good here. It's actually going to give you a little more stretch in your shoulders. So head, chest lifting up, breath smooth and steady. One more deep inhale. Exhale, release. And then if you interlace your fingers, just shift everything over one. So the opposite thumb and index come on top. And then the same thing this time. If you would like to add your feet, you're welcome to do that as well. So as you inhale, arms reach, and you might be in this variation with palms facing towards your side. See if you can lift your shoulder heads a little longer or a little more towards the ceiling, but get length in your neck. So what happens when I have two thoughts happening in my head at the same time and I try to say them both? Good. One more deep inhale. Exhale, release down. Make a little pillow with your hands. Turn your cheek to one side. Just waggle the hips back and forth. Release them out. And then turn your cheek to the other side. And then bringing fingertips underneath your shoulder heads. Elbows squeezing in towards the midline, just moving into some low cobra. So inhale, chest extends forward and up. You're not pressing into your hands here. You're really generating this movement from your lower back. Exhale, lower. Inhale up. Exhale, lower. Keep the legs active. There's even a little, your glutes are working about 60, 70%. Inhale up. Exhale, lower. Good. Inhale up, hold here. So Bhujangasana, low cobra pose. And then let's press to our tabletop, curl our toes under, downward facing dog. So first downward dog of the day. Make sure that you have enough space. You're probably going to have a little bend in your knees for this first one. Doesn't matter if your heels ever touch the floor behind you. Do check to see that your feet are about hips distance apart with second and third toe pointing forward. It's almost like you're kind of hiding your heels behind your toes. Peek forward to see that your arms are shoulders distance apart and that your fingers are spreading and pressing evenly. And then release the neck down. And come into a place of stillness right away. And just notice if you have the urge to fidget. So we often do that in our downward dog, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Some days, though, it's nice to challenge ourselves to just drop into this quiet place in the pose, to pay attention to how things are feeling. Good. So nice and easy. Just start to walk your feet forward to meet your hands here. And again, you might have a nice little bend in your elbows. Grab opposite elbows. Just hang forward. Nod your head yes. Nod your head no. Be really gentle. This can be an intense movement some days, depending upon how we slept or if we're stressed. And then change the cross of your arm so the opposite elbow comes in front. And then just sway a little bit from side to side. It's like your arms are an elephant trunk. Maybe get curious about your feet, how they work when you shift your upper body like this to keep you rooted to the earth. And then finally, just release your hands down to the mat. Let your neck get a little longer. Keep that bend in your knees or find one if you don't have one. And then slowly begin to roll up one vertebra at a time. Just roll the shoulders back a couple of times when you get there. And then we're going to start to flow here. So feet hips distance apart. You can stand a little closer if you feel balanced doing that. Just moving into some half sun salutes. So arms releasing by your side, palms facing open. Gives you this widening across your heart and chest. Hold on to this feeling of standing tall for each of these poses as we move through this half sun salute. So inhaling, arms stretch up. As you exhale, you fold in, coming back to that Uttanasana, letting your neck release. Inhale, chest extends forward, gaze comes forward. Exhale, fold. Good, inhale, press into your feet, stretch arms out and up. As you exhale, hands come together at your heart. Inhaling, reaching. Exhale, fold in. Inhale, chest extends forward, gaze comes forward. Exhale, fold. Pressing into your feet, stretching arms out and up. As you exhale, hands come together at your heart. So I'm not going to cue you. If you don't know these, you can just follow along with me. Otherwise, maybe close your eyes and just move with your breath. 3 of these. Take your time. Let them feel good. Good. So there's no rush finishing that 3rd round. When you get there, you're just standing in your Tadasana, your mountain pose with palms together at your hearts, eyes closed. And you're checking in and you're noticing how you're feeling. So I don't know about you, but there's just something about starting any sun salute that makes me feel happy. It's like I've conditioned my brain to release a little dopamine. So perhaps you're feeling that. It also just feels so good to move and breathe rhythmically, to find space. So before we move into some full sun salutes, let's just come into a triangle pose here. So again, if you do have props available, a block can be really nice here. We're going to step wide on our mat, so you're facing the long edge of the mat, and then the edges of the feet are parallel with the edges of the mat. You can take your block behind your right ankle. Then from deep within this right hip socket, you're going to turn that leg out to 90 degrees. So this is kind of the setup that we have for coming into our warrior 2, except for that we're going to keep our legs straight. And then I want you to spin these back toes in a lot. So this left hip is releasing down. We're heel to arch here. So right heel is intersecting left arch. Inhale, stretch your arms up. So even though the legs are on this kind of like a separate funky plane, do try to square your torso. So upper body to the edge of the mat in front of you. All right, so we hold on to all of that. Start to shift your hips off to the left. Find length through the right side of our body. So this is like that Vashisthasana pose that we did. Keep reaching, reaching, reaching. And if you don't have a block, you could rest your hand on your thigh above your knee, your shin. If you've got your block, you can play with the height. So just land with palm on the block underneath your shoulder, and then take that top arm up. Fire up the legs a little more. So really press into your feet. Feel the arches lift. Good. And then you're trying to spin these right ribs up towards the ceiling a little bit. And then sometimes what happens is that we kind of bring our head forward. So I want you to imagine that that your spine is against a wall behind you, and then you can maybe lean your head back a little bit as well. You don't want to overdo that. And then finally, you can play with your gaze. So you could be looking down, you could be looking forward. Maybe you start to bring your eyeballs up to that left thumb. Breath smooth and steady. Have you started holding the breath? Especially if you're getting sensation in any spots in this pose, and you could be feeling that in a lot of spots. This is a great pose to kind of stretch out everything. All right, so from here, bring your gaze down to your right toes. If you have your block, you're just gonna grab it. As you inhale, come on up. And then we're gonna parallel our feet here. Can move that block behind your left ankle, and then the same setup. So from deep within this left hip socket, that leg turns out to 90. Right toes turn in a lot. This right hip is releasing down, whereas we're getting the hip opening in this front leg. Inhale, stretch your arms up. And then just square both sides of your waist to the long side of your mat. Good. As you exhale, shift hips off to the right. Lengthen, lengthen, lengthen through this left side. Keep reaching. And again, hand on thigh, shin. If you've got a prop, they're great. Often higher is better. I especially like higher in this pose just because it helps me to find more space. Keep pressing to the inner edge of your left foot. So the mound of the big toe, the inner heel. As you do that, you're gonna feel more hip opening happening. And then again, perhaps play with your gaze. So looking forward, maybe starting to bring your gaze up. Maybe you even close your eyes for a breath or two. And sometimes that's nice. It just helps us to get inside the pose, notice where we're feeling the sensation. Couple more breaths here. Really fill up on your inhale, lengthen through both sides of your waist, but especially that left side. And then as you exhale, maybe you can twist in a little deeper. Notice if that right leg is falling asleep. Activate it, firm the muscles above the knee. All right, so you can go ahead and bring your block up and then we'll just move it out of the way. So inhale, come on up. Parallel your feet and then step your feet together. And we're gonna come to the top of our mat and we're gonna move into some full sun salute. So you can just take your block off to the side here. So find your nice Tadasana, your nice mountain pose. As you inhale, arms reach up. As you exhale, hinge forward, fold in. Inhale, chest lengthens, gaze comes forward, and then keep looking forward. Bend your knees a lot, plant your palms. Right foot back, then left foot. So here we are in our full plank. You're welcome to take this. Let's shift forward on toes. You could also come to knees. Exhale, lower, chaturanga, hover, and then come all the way down. So inhale, low cobra. If you feel ready for an upward dog, drag hands back so see that wrists land underneath your elbows. And then as you inhale, press into your hands, firm up the legs. So your shins, your knees, your thighs are lifting up off the mat. If you're here, I recommend that you come back down to your low cobra. It's gonna be much kinder and gentler on your lumbar, and you'll be practicing yoga for a long time that way. If you are in your upward dog, you can roll over your toes to your downward dog. From your low cobra, press to tabletop, curl toes under. And then you take a few breaths here in this downward dog. Make any little adjustments that you need to. So feet hips distance apart. Spreading fingers, pressing evenly, firming up the arms. And then let the back of the neck lengthen and release. So your gaze is between your toes, your ears are lining up with your biceps, that inner arm. And then as you inhale, find a little bend in your knees, come to your tippy toes. End of your exhale, you can either hop both feet through, walk forward, or step right then left. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, fold in. Press into your feet. Rise on up to your extended mountain pose. And then as you exhale, hands come together at your heart. We have a few more of those. Inhaling, reaching. As you exhale, fold in. Inhale, chest extends, gaze comes forward. So this time, bend knees, plant palms, step with your left foot first, then your right. Stretch out this exhale as you lower chaturanga. So you can hover or come all the way down. If you're hovering, you flip right into your upward facing dog. As you exhale, downward facing dog. And this is like a home base. So you let the breath slow down. Maybe close your eyes. Check in. And then inhaling, finding a little bend in your knees, coming to your tippy toes, peeking where you're going. End of your exhale, walk feet forward, a step left and right, or hop both feet through. So a lot of ways to get to the top of the mat. Inhale, chest lengthens. Exhale, fold. Root down to rise up, taking up space, finding that length in your spine. As you exhale, hands come together at your heart. Couple more. Inhaling, reaching. As you exhale, fold in. And hopefully the hamstrings are starting to warm up a little bit here. Inhale, chest lengthens. Then knees, plant palms, right foot back, then left, shift forward on toes. Take your version of your chaturanga, vinyasa, being very distinct about each move. Feel elbows squeeze in on your back bend. As you exhale, downward facing dog. So already the downward dog is starting to feel a little different. As we create heat, as we start to find space in our body, as we warm up, limber up, we start to find more space, a little more ease in these poses. Some days that takes longer. As you inhale, bend your knees, come to your tippy toes, walk, step, or hop through. Inhale, lengthen. Good, exhale, fold. Press down into your feet. Stretch arms out and up. And then as you exhale, hands come together at your heart. So if you had a block, just move it to the top of the mat. So you can use that. And then we're gonna do one more sun salute back down to downward dog. So inhaling, reaching. As you exhale, hinge forward, fold in. Inhale, chest extends forward, gaze comes forward. Bend your knees, plant your palms, right foot back, then left, your version of your chaturanga. Inhale, low cobra or upward dog. As you exhale, downward facing dog. And then this time, inhale, lift your right leg up. As you exhale, step your right foot through between your hands. You might have to pick it up and move it, and then walk it off to the left. So heel toe it to the left a time or two. Spin into the back edge of that left foot. So same setup that we had for our triangle pose, except for this time, we are gonna keep this right knee bent. We're gonna windmill arms up and over. So finding our warrior two. So same idea, hip opener on the front leg. This left hip is releasing down, but torso is squaring. So your body is in all of these little different planes of action. You can bring your gaze out over your right fingertips. Don't be shy about sinking deep into this front leg. And you might find that in order to do that, you need to take your stance a little bit wider. So you can always do that. You definitely don't want your knee tracking over your toes. Good, so let's keep our legs exactly like this, nice and light. We're gonna reach left fingertips down that back leg, spin your right palm to face up and then reach that arm back. So reverse warrior. Don't lose the legs here. Keep spinning left ribs up towards the ceiling. Keep lengthening through this right side. And then from here, let's find our reverse triangle. So start to straighten that front leg. Feel shoulder blades release down your back. Inhale, come on up. And then we're gonna find our triangle pose again. So as you exhale, hinge forward, fold in. And then you can grab that block again. So we've been here before. Maybe your stance feels a little wider. You can keep it like that. If you wanna heel toe that back foot in for a little narrower stance, you're welcome to do that as well. And then let's transition this into our Ardha Chandrasana. So left hand comes to left hip. Keep your chest as open, just bring your gaze down to your right toes. Bend your right knee. It's more of a warrior two in our legs. Walk your block forward about a foot. And then start to lift from the inseam of that left leg. So toes are pointing forward. You might want a little micro bend in this right knee, especially if you're hyper flexible. And then maybe you start to extend this top arm up. So you can see triangle pose here. We've just turned it on its side. Made it a little more challenging. Are you breathing? Are you smiling? Good, and then let's transition back to our warrior two. Ooh, do better than I did. Very nice. And then as we exhale, we're gonna windmill arms up and over. Spin onto those left toes. Your option here. If you'd like to build a little more heat, you take a chaturanga vinyasa. Otherwise, you simply pull back to your downward facing dog. And when you get there, take a nice deep inhale through your nose. Open your mouth, sigh the breath out, let it go. Ha. And we take our second side. So inhaling, left leg lifts. Exhale, step that foot through. And then just walk it off to the right. So heel toe it over, spin into the back edge of your right foot. So left heel is intersecting that right arch. Strong legs, keep that deep bend in your left knee. Virabhadrasana 2. Make sure that you have enough space here. Big hip opener in this front leg. Gaze soft and gentle out over those left fingers. So the ears love to creep up around. The shoulders like to creep up around the ears. Soften them down. And then it's kind of counterintuitive, but if you can firm the muscle to bone, so if you can activate the arms a little more, the muscles there, it actually is easier to hold the arms like this. Couple more breaths with each exhale. See if you can sink in a little deeper. Good. Flip your left palm to face up. Nice and easy. Reverse your warrior. So keep your legs exactly the same. Pinky side of that top hand is spinning down. You're rolling these right ribs up. You're finding that length through the left side of your body. Breath smooth and steady. That inhale through your nose, that exhale through your nose. And then from here, press to the inner edge of that left foot. Bring that leg to straight. So reverse triangle pose. And then as you inhale, press into feet. So upright your torso. And then we shift into our triangle pose. Again, if you feel like you want to bring that back foot in, you're welcome to. Sometimes it feels good to have a really wide-legged triangle pose. So extend forward as your hips reach off to the right. Hand on shin, thigh, block. So just pausing here briefly before we transition into our Ardha Chandrasana. Find those shoulder blades stacking on top of each other. Keep spinning your left ribs up. Keep pressing to the inner edge of your left foot. Bend your right elbow, fingertips to your hip. Keep chest open. Just bring your gaze down to your left toes. Deep bend in the knee. Walk the block forward about a foot. And then start to shift the weight into that front foot, that left foot. You might keep a little micro bend there, especially if you're hyper flexible. And then as you feel ready and balanced here, you start to extend that top arm up. So shoulder blades stacking on top of each other. Legs are really active. Even this leg that's lifted, especially. Keep wrapping those left ribs up. You might even bring your gaze up. And then we're going to transition back into our warrior two. So go slow. Or not so slow. It doesn't have to look perfect. This is how we get good at it. From here, windmill arms up and over. And again, you have an opportunity to take a chaturanga vinyasa, moving with your breath if you would like. If you're getting warm, we're towards the end of class here, just pull back, downward facing dog. So some days less is more. And then from here, let's find a nice little child's pose. So lower to your knees, take big toes together, knees wide, and then melt your hips back. Stretch your chest forward. And then play around with your arms. So they can be extended if that feels good. Maybe you just find a deeper bend in your elbows. Maybe you bring your arms by your side in this pose. So whatever feels good. And then really consciously shifting your breath in your child's pose. So letting it slow down, get a little longer, the inhale and the exhale. You've definitely built some heat in the body, so maybe you're it's kind of using your breath to slow the heart rate down. Inner child's pose, let's start to find a twist here. So just begin to walk your arms off to the right. You can rest that left ear, the inner left arm. Feel those left ribs wrap towards the right thigh. And then walk back to center and off to the left. So little twist in child's pose. Resting right ear on right arm, spinning right ribs up. And then walking back to center. Inhale, just roll on up. And let's come into Upavista. So taking our legs wide, it can be nice to actually rotate on your mat so that your heels can rest on your mat, especially if you're on a hard surface. I find that it can kind of aggravate the heels a little bit. So being on your mat's a nice thing. Also, if you're a little tighter, I can't recommend enough sitting up on a blanket or two. Just makes this a little bit easier. So I'm gonna demo that. So it just helps you to get a little more space in that pelvic girdle. All right, and then finally, you might need a block here. So to the inside of your right thigh, could be lower right leg, depending upon how flexible you are. So we're gonna take our right arm, extend forward. So again, you could be high, kind of close into the leg if you're a little tighter. If you're a little more flexible, maybe the block's a little lower. A few of us might even be able to get down to the forearm. Anchor into the left sit bone, point toes up towards the ceiling, start to spin the right ribs up towards the ceiling. So as you can see, this is a little bit reminiscent of that Vashisthasana side plank pose, triangle pose. And then left fingertips on left hip, kind of lean that elbow back so you're getting a little shoulder stretch. You might stay here like this. Perhaps you start to extend that top arm up and over. Don't do that at the expense of losing that heart opening up towards the ceiling. So sometimes we start to close down, move the opposite direction instead. And maybe that means you come back here with your hand. So left hand on left hip. And then we just take a few breaths here. And it's intense when we come into these static poses with these intense stretches. So you might find that it's helpful to count the breath. So inhaling to the count of 5 or 6 or 7, and then exhaling to that same count. Good. So from here, let's go ahead and unwind. Take one hand on either side of that right foot, and then you're folding in. If you're tighter and you have a strap or a tie or a belt at home, that can go around the sole of the foot. And then that's nice. You might even be pretty upright here, but if you're feeling a stretch, you're doing the pose right. So I think that we can get really attached to the idea that these poses, it needs to look like all of the super flexible yogis on Instagram, that the pose needs to be that way, and nothing could be further from the truth. When you're feeling this stretch, when there's a sense of intensity in your own body, that's where you need to pause. And eventually we start to move to deeper places. And sometimes we don't. That's okay too. So a couple more breaths on this side. Making sure there's no tension in your face, your jaw, maybe even a little smile. Okay, so from here we start to upright ourselves, and then find center, and then just check in again. So anchoring into your sit bones, rooting down. As you do that, you can lengthen through the sides of your waist, pressing into the center of your heels. This is probably the hardest part in this pose, is to remember to keep the legs engaged. So those toes are active, they're pointing up towards the ceiling. Just doing that kind of gets all of the muscles in the legs involved. Then we're gonna come into that little lateral side stretch twist. So we'll probably look very similar to the other side. You can have the block more inside your thigh. It might be a little lower. And then you're gonna bring the back of the arm onto the block, right fingertips on right hip, and you start to twist up. So you might be a lot of different places here. They're all good. That right sit bone is gonna wanna pop up. It's gonna do it a little bit, but just think heavy thoughts there. Think grounding down. And if you're getting a good intense stretch in your body, stay like this. Otherwise, you might start to extend that top arm up and over, but don't do that at the expense of losing the twist and all of that lateral extension. So lengthen through the left side of your waist. Keep spinning those left ribs up. Breath smooth and steady. Couple more. And then as we exhale, so we unwind one hand on either side of this extended left leg. And then you walk your hands forward any amount. You might be really high. You might have the strap around your foot. So all really great places to be. One of the things that yoga really teaches us how to do is to pay attention to how we're feeling in our own skin. And we want that. We want to make little adjustments so that we can be in these poses fairly comfortably and fairly safely. Not even fairly safely, very safely. Couple more breaths here. Good, go ahead and come on up. Let's do a quick little fold down the center. So I find this to be very challenging. If you're tighter in the inner thigh, the groin, you're gonna be in that camp too. Some of us can just fold right in. If it's easy for you, I really want you to activate the glutes, the outer hips, and squeeze them in and fold in. You might find that you can't go quite as far, but you'll feel more stretch. Otherwise, blocks in front of you can be really nice. Just called bringing the floor a little closer. Do try to find extension here as opposed to rounding in to go deeper. Keep that lengthening. Think a little back bend in the spine here. So Upavista Konasana, wide angle pose, just simple forward fold down the center. Simple, but not easy. Good, and then we're gonna inhale, roll on up. You're gonna take your hands underneath your knees. Ooh, nice and gentle. Draw the legs in. And then we're gonna give them an extension, two straights, and then just bounce the legs a little bit here. Good. And then go ahead and bend your knees. Give yourself a little seated hug. A little self-love. And we're gonna come into our Shavasana. So making your way into your final resting pose, it can be nice to just move straps and props out of the way so that you're not touching anything when you come into your Shavasana. If you know that you're a little tighter in your lumbar, if there's sensation there, you might grab a blanket, roll it up for underneath your knees, just to give yourself a little support. You could take blocks underneath your knees. You could also bend your knees, take your feet as wide as the mat, and then allow your knees to knock in towards each other. And then finally, you could also just find a classic Shavasana. So if you're comfortable, no props, legs extend a little wider than hips distance apart, arms a little wider than shoulders distance apart, palms facing up. You might kind of snuggle those shoulder blades underneath you. Deep inhale. Open your mouth, sigh the breath out, ha. Just soaking up these final moments here, really giving yourself permission to be quiet, to rest. Take a deeper inhale. Open your mouth, sigh the breath out, ha. And then start to bring some gentle movement back to your body. Wiggle, stretch. And just keep the eyes closed for now, so the gaze inward. You can bend your knees, roll to one side or the other. And just pause there in the fetal position for a moment. And finally, just using your hands to help you press up to a comfortable seat. It's a nice, tall, easy seat. Just noticing how you feel here. Notice the space you've created in your body, the strength, the sense of ease. Notice how your breath has shifted. Notice how your headspace has shifted. And send yourself love and gratitude for taking some time for yourself to do something that helps you to feel good and to check in. And finally, just promise yourself that you're going to carry this feeling that you've worked so hard to create with you into the rest of the day, the rest of the week ahead. Bring palms together at your heart. Just bow your head with a smile. Great work today. Thank you.